Hi everybody, I'm Kathy Wing, Artistic Director of the Randall Theater Company, and welcome to this special edition of Ghostlighting Theater in the Dark. I hope you're ready for a mystery because tonight we're bringing you our production of Cam Duncan and the Dilemma of the Doctor's Wife in its entirety. That's right, the whole show from start to finish. We also have a bonus feature. During the intermission, we'll hear from some of the cast about their thoughts about the show and the roles they played and what it was like to act on a virtual stage. So, grab some popcorn, turn down the lights, and get ready to enjoy the show.
And now, the Randall Theater Company and the Ghostlight Players present Cam Duncan and the Dilemma of the Doctor's Wife by Amilynn Carter, featuring Lynn Dutra as Sally O'Brien, John Wing as Police Inspector Albert Locke, Meagan Kirby as Rose McKenzie, Kathy Wing as Nurse Margaret Bertinelli, Toni Holley as Lucy the Waitress, and David Alonso Rodriguez as Private Detective Cam Duncan.
It is early evening on a fall day in 1947. We are in the office of Private Detective Cam Duncan. There is a desk, a chair. On the desk is a phone, a lamp, and a cluttered mess of paper, sandwich wrappers, and coffee mug, a small stack of newspapers, etc. The rest of the room is in similar disarray. There's a window with a flashing neon light outside. Private Detective Cam Duncan is seated at his desk.
The day started out like any other. A hot cup of coffee, a stale donut, and a few empty promises to the waitress at Vinny's Diner. Then spending the rest of the day waiting for that phone to ring with the case of a lifetime. But just like yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, I ended the day where I started, with a case of a lifetime nowhere in sight, and a cup of coffee that was far from hot. I might have avoided what happened next if I'd closed the office at 6 o'clock as usual, but as it happened, I decided to stay a few minutes longer to catch up on my fan mail. Past due, past due, past due. Ah, here's something different. Seriously past due.
Come on, Cam, it's after 6. Let's close up.
Oh, sorry, Sal. I didn't know it was getting so late. I was just catching up on some filing. Look, why don't you go home? I'll lock up.
Are you sure? I mean, I can...
Get out of here, kid.
Whatever you say, boss. Hey, Cam?
Yeah?
I hate to ask. I know things are tough right now, but... Well, it's been 4 weeks since I've been paid, and I was just wondering...
I just wrote you a check just last week, didn't I?
Actually, it was 3 weeks ago, and that check bounced.
Really? Must be some problem down at the bank. Here, let me write you a new one. Where's that checkbook? I know it's here some...
Cam, no.
I just saw it a minute ago, I swear.
Cam?
Come to think of it, that may have been at home.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Tell you what, I'll bring it tomorrow and we'll square things up. I promise, okay, Sally? Sal?
I'm sorry, Cam, but a girl just can't live on rubber checks and good intentions.
Oh, sure, I know, but...
I got rent to pay, you know? Oh, sure, it's just a single room with a half bath and a hot plate, but I gotta pay it just the same. And then there's car fare, a few groceries, and just once in a while, Cam, I'd like to see a picture. Maybe with Clark Gable or Cary Grant. But no, I gotta go to my mother's house for dinner and walk 12 blocks to get home because I don't even have a dime for the bus, and I just don't think...
Okay, I get it, Sally, I do. Look, we're just going through a rough stretch here. God knows it's been far too long since we've had a case, but our luck is gonna change. I feel it. You just need to hang in there for a little while longer. I need you, Sally. You know that, don't you?
Sure, though right now I'm not sure what for. The phone hasn't rung in a week.
Well, that's just because the service was disconnected because the check got lost in the mail. I'm going to straighten all that out on Thursday.
Thursday? Why Thursday?
Because, well, Thursday is... It's just that well, the reason doesn't matter, that's all.
Never mind. Look, I get it. Cam, I like you and all, but I gotta make a living. And a friend of my sister's knows a guy who heard they might be hiring a typist down at Porter's Secretarial. I think I'm gonna...
What? What kind of flimsy lead is that? Haven't I taught you anything? No, Sally, please. Just give me a little more time. Look.
He goes through his pockets and finds some bills.
See, look, here's $3. That should get you through the next few days. Come on, Sal, what do you say?
I don't know.
Go on, take it. Please, Sal.
She takes one of the bills.
Well, I guess I can drop in on my mother for a dinner a few more times.
Yeah?
She takes a second bill.
And I can probably talk my landlord into giving me another week.
That's my girl. I knew I could count on you.
But this is the last time.
The last time, absolutely.
He starts to pocket the last bill, but she grabs it out of his hand.
I mean it, Cam.
I know. I wouldn't have it any other way.
He draws her close.
Now, let me see that smile.
Oh, really, Cam? That bit may work with the other girls, but I know you too well. Now come up with some cash and I'll be grinning from ear to ear. Good night, Cam.
Night, Sally.
Sally starts to exit and is met by the incoming Inspector Locke. He carries several large file folders stuffed with paperwork.
Oh, hello, Sally. How's the prettiest little secretary in the city?
Oh, I wouldn't really know, but I'm all right. Thank you.
Pretty and quick as they come. Am I right, Duncan?
Nothing gets by you, Inspector. How are you, sir?
Fine, fine.
What brings you by our humble office so late in the afternoon?
He sets the file folders down.
Oh, I was just passing by and I saw that your light was still on, so I thought I'd come up and see if you might be interested in helping me out with something.
Cam, do you want me to stay and take notes or something?
Listen to that. What a girl. Sally, when are you going to leave this bum and come work for us down at the precinct?
Well, actually,
Sally was just on her way out. Long day, you know. No, don't worry. I can manage.
good night, Albert.
There you go. Good night. Now, see you tomorrow.
She is out. A relieved Cam turns back to Locke.
Now, Inspector, you were saying?
You're a lucky man, Duncan.
Yeah, so she keeps telling me. Inspector?
Yes. Well, it's probably for the best that we discuss in private. I'm afraid I got a rather delicate situation on my hands. I hope I can count on your discretion.
Of course.
Good. I'll come straight to the point. I'm working on a case. A homicide. Dr. Frank McKenzie. You heard about it?
McKenzie? Sure. It's been in all the papers. A big uptown doctor found shot to death in his office. But I thought you had that one figured out. The wife did it, right?
Rose McKenzie, the good doctor's wife, is our prime suspect. We've questioned her twice, but so far all we've got is circumstantial evidence. Nothing to hold her on, yet.
So you want me to dig up some solid evidence on her? Isn't that your job?
You're right. Finding the evidence that would convict Rose McKenzie is my job. And the fact is, I have acquired some highly incriminating evidence, the kind of proof that would not only convict Rose McKenzie, but send her to the electric chair. What I need you to do is find a way to prove her innocence.
Prove her innocence? Hold on, Locke, I don't get it. You want my help to let a killer go free? What's your angle?
It's simple. Rose McKenzie did not kill her husband.
Oh, you really had me going there. Look, I ain't the smartest guy in the room, but I'm no fool. I know a joke when I hear one. Wait, you're serious? Come on, Locke. If even half of what they said in the paper is true, she did it for sure. You gotta know that.
It's no joke, Duncan. Rose is innocent.
Rose now, is it? You on a first name basis with this dame? What are you not telling me?
Locke picks up the file folders and thrusts them toward Cam.
Everything you need to know is in these envelopes. Crime scene photos, witness statements, investigators' notes, transcripts from the interviews with the suspect. I told the chief I was going to study them overnight. It's all got to be back to the precinct by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. That's how long you have to find me what I need.
Now I know you're off your rocker. Look, I don't get what's going on, but this ain't like you. Lock 'em up, Locke. That's what they call you in the squad room, right? This don't add up. Unless, maybe you got a little something on the side with a certain recently widowed murder suspect?
Locke turns and flies at Cam, grabbing his lapels and pinning him against the wall.
Hey, take it easy. It's none of my business.
It's not like that. And you're right. It's none of your business. Now, are you going to help me or not?
Sure, I'll do some digging, see what turns up. So if you wouldn't mind letting loose, this is the only suit I got.
Yeah, right. I'll see you tomorrow.
Inspector Locke exits.
Yep, tomorrow then. I'll just be working on this till then.
Cam moves to his desk with the file folders. He spreads out the contents and begins looking at them page by page.
On a normal day, this kind of case I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. But I did happen to have some free time on my hands, and given Locke's powers of persuasion, I decided it couldn't hurt to have a look. So I settled in what it would look like to be a very long night. Good thing I saved some coffee. Truth be told, there were at least a dozen other things I'd rather be doing than sorting through Locke's investigation notes. Peeling off my fingernails comes to mind. But something was off about all this. I'd known Albert Locke since he was a beat cop, and I'd never seen him fly off the handle like that. He was definitely in some kind of trouble. And whatever it is, this woman had something to do with it. I needed to find out what was going on before he did something really stupid. How hard could it be? Through it all, one thought kept nagging at the back of my mind. Am I gonna get paid for this? Yeah, who am I kidding?
Cam continues sifting through the pages.
So what have we got here? Crime scene photos? Ugh, that is definitely not a good way to go. Our suspect, Rose McKenzie, moved to the city 4 years ago. Been married to the good doctor for 3. No criminal record, nothing helpful there. Second marriage for the doctor. First wife died 8 years ago from a bout of pneumonia. Statement from McKenzie's nurse, Margaret Bertinelli. Says Mrs. McKenzie came by early in the day and went to the doc's private office. She heard them arguing. She couldn't hear what Mrs. McKenzie was saying, but heard the doctor telling him her things like, "No, I won't allow it," and so on. They came out of the doctor's office. He walks her to the door. Oh, here's something. The doc grabs her arm and says, "Remember what I told you." And she says, "You can't treat me this way," and storms out. Then the doc turns to Nurse Margaret and tells her to forget what she just saw. It's nothing, and goes back into his office. A couple hours later, they finish with the patients for the day. Nurse Margaret closes up. Says Dr. McKenzie was in his office, alive and well, when she left. Just outside the building, she says she noticed a man in an overcoat and a hat, carrying a very large satchel. None of the other witnesses mention him. So who is our mystery man? Maybe nobody, but maybe not. Margaret walks a few blocks and remembers she left her house keys at the office, and so she turns around. When she gets back to the office, she sees the light on under the doc's door and goes in. That's when she sees Doc McKenzie lying dead on the floor, and Mrs. McKenzie standing over him with a gun in her hand. She goes to the other room and calls the police, and the rest is in the police report, in which Mrs. McKenzie insists from the beginning that she found him like that, and was so shocked that she doesn't even remember picking up the gun.
Cam stretches and yawns. And continues looking through the papers. Lights change to indicate time passing from dusk to night to dawn. Cam is now in the desk chair, head on the desk, sound asleep. A figure is seen in silhouette through the window of the office door. The figure raps on the door, waking Cam. He stumbles to the door, stepping over the papers he dropped on the floor during the night. He opens the door to reveal Mrs. Rose McKenzie. She is stunningly beautiful. Cam rubs his eyes to make sure he's not dreaming, unable to speak.
Mr. Duncan. Cameron Duncan?
Yes, that's me. It's it's Cam, actually. But you can call me Cam.
Of course, I'm sorry for disturbing you so early in the morning, but may I come in?
Yes, please.
He ushers her in, clearing off a chair.
I'm afraid you've caught me at an awkward... do I know you, Miss...
It's Mrs., actually. Mrs. Frank McKenzie.
Rose.
What's that?
Nothing. Sure, Rose McKenzie. I should have recognized you from the papers. What can I do for you?
Mr. Duncan.
Cam.
All right, Cam. I know Detective Locke has been to see you. He says you're going to help us. Help me, that is. So I thought I should come speak to you.
So you've seen Detective Locke in the last few hours?
He came by to see me last night, yes.
I see. Well, yes, I'm gonna do what I can. Maybe you can tell me your side of things. What happened the night that your husband was killed?
You're very direct. I like that. I think you have the police report and my statement. It's all there.
Yes, but as an investigator, I find it's best to gather my own information before drawing a conclusion.
Of course, I should have realized. It's simple, really. I've been accused of killing my husband. I didn't do it.
Tell me what happened that day, starting with your visit to his office in the afternoon.
So you know about that?
Yes, as you said, I have the police report.
It was quite ridiculous, really. I've been wanting to redecorate the sitting room and the dining room in our home. They were quite in need of updating. I came by Frank's office to ask for money to make some purchases. I don't have any money of my own, you see. Well, at least I didn't at that time. I asked, he said no, and we quarreled. Frank raised his voice. When we came out of his office, I could see by the look on Mrs. Bertinelli's face that she had hurt him. I was angry when I left, but after walking around for a while, I realized that I was being unreasonable. Frank usually stays at the office after hours, so I decided to go back and apologize and see if we could go out for a late dinner together. Mrs. Bertinelli was gone, so I went straight into his office, and that's when I saw him lying on the floor.
She is sobbing now. Cam fumbles in his pockets for a handkerchief. He finds a crumpled one and hands it to her.
Thank you. There was blood everywhere and a gun. I must have picked it up without thinking. And then Mrs. Bertinelli walked in and she looked at me and I think she asked if I'd call the police, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't speak. Then she went out to the other room and called them. But when the officers got there, they were saying the most awful things, asking me why I killed my husband. And that's when Albert arrived.
Albert?
Yes, Inspector Locke. He was so kind to me, and...
She rises and she goes to him.
Mr. Duncan, Cam, you have to believe me. I didn't kill my husband. I loved him.
She puts her head on his chest and weeps. Cam clearly doesn't know quite what to do.
I had wanted to talk to Rose McKenzie, and her showing up at my door saved me the trouble of tracking her down. Unfortunately, that visit raised more questions than it answered, especially about the nature of her involvement with Locke. It wasn't like him to lose his head over his skirts, even a looker like Rose, Mrs. McKenzie. One thing was certain, Locke was in over his head and I needed to know why, but that would have to wait until later. Right now, it was time for a chat with Nurse Margaret Bertinelli.
Cam arrives at Margaret's front door and knocks. Margaret opens the door slightly. She is a middle-aged woman, pleasant enough. As the conversation progresses, we see that she is a bit of a busybody. She might also have cats.
Mrs. Bertinelli?
Yes? Who is it?
Cam Duncan, ma'am. I'm a private investigator. I'd like to talk to you about the murder of your employer, Dr. Frank McKenzie.
I've already told the police everything I know.
Yes, ma'am. I've seen the report, but I just have a few questions that only you can answer. Please, may I come in?
Margaret reluctantly opens the door and ushers him in.
Thank you, Mrs. Bertinelli. This shouldn't take long.
He pauses, looks around, hoping that she will invite him to sit. She does not. He shrugs and continues, taking out a notepad and pencil, and he takes notes as they talk.
Mrs. Bertinelli, how long did you work for Dr. McKenzie?
It would have been 12 years next month, including the 2 years that Dr. McKenzie was gone serving in the war effort. I kept the office going for him.
I see. So you remember when he met Mrs. McKenzie?
Yes, it was about 4 years ago. She was Rose Bailey then. She had recently moved into town and needed to see a doctor.
What did she come in for?
I can't tell you that.
All right, what can you tell me about her? How did she go from patient to doctor's wife?
Well, I suppose it happened the way most things like that do. She came in here for the first few visits. Then Dr. McKenzie added her to his house call rounds. A few months later, they announced their engagement.
You didn't approve.
It's not for me to say. I just thought it was strange, that's all. He barely knew her. But he seemed to feel that she needed someone to take care of her, to protect her. He would talk about how helpless and alone she was.
Is that what you thought too?
Mr. Duncan, please sit down. Dr. McKenzie was a lonely man. His first wife died about 8 years ago. Terrible thing. He never quite recovered. But then Rose came along and he just seemed, well, different.
In what way?
He was happier, with a sense of purpose, I suppose. But there was always something about her. Nothing I can put my finger on. Call it women's intuition if you like, but I always felt that she wasn't quite as helpless as she seemed.
And after they married?
They seemed happy enough at first, though lately there seemed to be some tension.
How so?
Oh, I don't know. They used to meet for lunch 2 or 3 times a week, but in the last few months, hardly at all. And when I did see them together, there was almost always a quarrel of some kind. It would usually blow over, so I didn't think much about it. I didn't want to pry. I mind my own business, Mr. Duncan.
Yes, of course. You said in your statement that on the day of the murder, you heard them arguing. So, based on what you just said, that wasn't unusual.
Yes, except that they usually made up before parting ways. But not this time. Not that day. Mrs. McKenzie seemed on the verge of tears, and Dr. McKenzie, well, he told me to forget what happened and just went back into his office and closed the door. More like slammed the door, if you know what I mean. We saw our afternoon patients and we closed up for the day. That was the last time I saw him alive.
Your statement also mentioned seeing a man outside the building as you were leaving that day. What made you take notice of him?
Mr. Duncan, I leave that building every day at the same time, and I'd never seen that man before. He was leaning up against the wall as if he was waiting for something or someone. It was a warm fall day, but he had his overcoat on and it was all buttoned up. He also had his hat pulled down over his eyes. Between you and me, I don't think he wanted to be recognized. Very strange.
And he was carrying a satchel of some kind?
Yes, sort of like a large carpet bag.
I see. Just one more question, Mrs. Bertinelli. When you discovered Mrs. McKenzie with the body, did you find anything unusual about her behavior?
Well, I don't know what's usual about walking into a room and find your husband has been shot to death. She was very clearly upset, eyes red from crying, no lipstick, her dress wrinkled from bending down over the body. She's usually quite the fashion plate.
Do you think that Rose McKenzie killed her husband?
Look, Mr. Duncan, I know what people are saying, but those two loved each other. Sure, they were going through a rough patch, but I don't think Rose is capable of murder.
Anyone else that you know that may have had it in for him?
No, of course not. He was a good man, not an enemy in the world.
All right. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Bertinelli. And if you think of anything else, please give me a call on the number on this card. Or better yet, come by my office.
Well, I doubt I'll think of anything else that would help. Like I said, I mind my own business. Cam exits.
As witness interviews go, the one with Nurse Margaret turned out to be a long road to a dead end. She had her story straight, that's for sure. And so far, nobody had a bad word to say about the doc. So, how does a guy like that end up on the wrong side of a gun barrel? There's still the spat with his wife. She said that they argued about redecorating in the house. I'd seen murders committed over less, but it really didn't seem likely that Mrs. McKenzie would shoot her husband over a disagreement about curtains. And what about the man outside the doc's building? Something told me that if I could find him, a lot of other things would fall into place. I had a lot to think about. Maybe a cup of coffee and a slice of pie at Vinny's would help me clear my mind. As it turned out, I probably should have just kept on walking.
Cam arrives at Vinny's diner and sits at a table. He's a regular there, and they all know him. They also know his reputation for running up a tab that's not likely to be paid off anytime soon. Lucy, the waitress, comes to the table. She's a little gruff, but she does harbor a soft spot for Cam.
A little late in the day for you, Mr. Duncan. Did you sleep in your office again?
What makes you say that?
Same tie as yesterday.
Would you look at that? Must have picked up the same one by mistake. Coffee and a slice of Vinny's apple pie, Lucy. And have you got a copy of this morning's paper laying around?
The paper I can get you. Coffee and pie? Vinny says no more till you pay down your tab.
Oh, come on, Luce. You know I'm good for it.
It ain't me, it's Vinny. You know how he gets.
Lucy, this is me we're talking about. Vinny don't need to know.
He always knows. Look, I can probably get by with the coffee. Don't push your luck.
Cam takes out his notepad and starts flipping through his notes from Margaret's interview. Lucy returns and sets the paper and coffee on the table.
Thanks, Luce. Has anyone ever told you that you're the most beautiful, kind, and generous?
Enjoy your coffee. I got paying customers to take care of.
She exits. Cam opens the paper and starts reading.
Looks like Doc McKenzie's murder is still front page news. Nothing new here, though. Just the same information as yesterday, dressed up to be a little bit more sensational. Everybody loves the scandal, especially newspapers if it means selling a few more copies. Well, not a bad photo of Mrs. McKenzie.
Lucy enters and sets a plate with a slice of pie down on the table.
What's this? I thought you said...
It's nothing. Just something left over from yesterday. We were going to throw it out anyway.
Oh, Lucy, you do love me after all.
Don't flatter yourself. Ain't that something? A girl gets lucky enough to marry a doctor. A doctor. And then she shoots him in the head. Crazy world, right?
Yeah, crazy.
You know, I think I seen her before. Before the murder, I mean. Yeah, I'm sure of it. She was in here about 2 weeks ago. She was with a man, but not that doctor fella.
Lucy, are you sure?
Oh, I'm sure all right. I remember because they came in just before closing. No one else was here.
Who was the man? Did you recognize him?
He looked kind of familiar. I can't remember his name.
Could you hear what they were talking about?
Not really. Whenever I came over to the table, they just sort of clammed up. But I can tell you one thing, they were real chummy-like.
I don't suppose you'd noticed if either one of them carried something like a carpet bag.
No, I didn't see anything like that. What's with all the questions? You're starting to sound like a cop. Wait, I remember now, the man she was with, he used to be the beat cop right here in this neighborhood. His name was Hawk or
Locke.
That's it, Officer Locke. He got promoted or something and he didn't come around here anymore after that. Until he came in with her, that is.
Cam stands, downs the coffee, and quickly gathers up his things and the newspaper.
Thank you, Lucy, for the coffee and everything. I have to go.
Picks up the plate of pie on his way out.
I'll bring back the plate, I promise.
And here we are at our virtual intermission. Now, I know at intermission, everybody usually runs off to the restroom or grabs some snacks before Act 2. But if you want to do that, that's fine. But be sure and hit the pause button first, because you do not want to miss what our actors had to say about doing a show in this weird virtual sort of way.
Well, there's not a lot of her in the script outside of her being, the perky little secretary. And so I just did my best to, amongst all the detective stuff that David was doing, I was just trying to be the, let's bring a smile into this. Because Sally's real sweet. I like how she's written. I like her interactions with Locke, and their little playful relationship, and they getting her the ice cream, and that was cute.
And it was kind of a last minute thing that I was going to step in and do it. And of course I hadn't thought that I was going to be a part of it, so I hadn't read any of the script beforehand. So I was kind of following the mysteries and the twists and turns as it went along. Not knowing the whole story before starting, I didn't know like much about the character. And so I kind of did what I do a lot on stage, which is like, I picked like a voice, because I'm good with voices. It really kind of made it interesting down the stretch when his character changed a little bit. I don't know. I think he stayed consistent.
Oh no, I liked Lucy. I liked Lucy a lot. My take on her was that she's always lived in the neighborhood, and most likely she and Cam's mom were friends. So she's always had this kind of, motherly connection with him. She would love to be able to pour him a free cup of coffee, and she does. But it's only because, she's just known Cam for so long and really cares about him and wants him to succeed, but understands that he's got to work a little harder.
And it's been really interesting. I think that Cam's such an interesting character in that he means well, but he's a little bit rough around the edges and is willing to do kind of whatever he needs to do to solve the case. But there are clearly people in his life that he cares about and wants to make sure that they're safe and happy and healthy. And I think it's really always the actor's job to find something that I myself can identify with and can latch onto as far as the character goes.
Femme fatales are a lot of fun in period pieces. To have the save me, but then they turn at the end is always fun. It gives you somewhere to go, and to have that kind of conniving sub layer was a lot of fun to get into. But then to hear not only did she do it, but she posed as Locke's sister, like that's low. It's awful, but it's like a juicy extra layer to get to use. So,
a reading is always different from a stage production because, especially in this instance where you're not there physically with another person. So you really got to make sure that you're connecting not only with the third person in the room, which is the camera and the audience in the same go, but you're also connecting with the people you see on screen. So it's really a lot of just working at it.
I'm not tech savvy, and the fact that I could even just get it up on my computer without my son helping me was an event. And then, of course, not memorizing lines was just weird.
Yeah.
And you can do it twice. Oops, I got to do that again.
And I honestly only read it 2 or 3 times before we would record, so I would find the beats. But otherwise it felt more like a cold read improv, which is a really cool exercise. I miss being able to interact with people in real time and emote with them in real time, because over Zoom there's a slight delay, and I can't look anybody directly in the eye, but I really appreciated being able to have a creative outlet all the same. So I definitely enjoyed it and hope I can do another one. Secret, I never wore pants.
It was real interesting. I haven't done anything like that. Acting to the camera. I've only ever done, stage acting. That was definitely new, especially with the process of Zoom, with the slight delays sometimes, or the weird little vocal glitches that'll happen. And
it was very different being on screen as opposed to being on stage. I'm a big guy, and so a lot of the roles I play, there's a lot of physicality. When I was the monster in Young Frankenstein, and all up here, but this one was more like can only use my face because you can only see from here up. So as the editor, I'm in the background of every scene going oh, well, if she paused there, I can just make that and do, and I can put a gunshot noise in there and it'll be, so it was a, like doing a crossword puzzle. It was like a workout for my brain. And now, the thrilling conclusion, or Act 2 of Cam Duncan and the Dilemma of the Doctor's Wife by Amilynn Carter. Please take this opportunity to silence your cell phones. Or don't. This is the internet. You can do whatever you want. Enjoy!
I hit the street not really knowing where I was headed, but I knew somebody owed me some answers. If Locke and Doc's wife knew each other before the murder, why didn't either one of them say something about it? There was one explanation that made sense. Somehow, Locke gets tangled up with Rose McKenzie. Her marriage to the good doctor is going sour, so she's looking for a way out. Was it possible that Locke was the one who pulled the trigger? Love can make a man do crazy things. That would explain why he dismissed the mysterious man outside the office building as a suspect. Maybe because he was. I didn't even want to think about it. I decided to head back to the office and pack up Locke's files and figure out my next move. One thing was for sure, I didn't like the direction this new bit of information was leading.
Cam enters the office. Sally and Locke are there laughing and chatting while they wait for him. The files are now neatly organized.
And so the girl says, "I'm sorry, officer. I must have left the gun in my other pants."
Oh, Inspector. I could listen to your stories all day. They're the best. Hi, Cam. Inspector Locke just stopped by to pick up his files.
I tried to call first, but your telephone is apparently disconnected. I was in the neighborhood, so I dropped in. The place was a mess, but as usual, Sally got everything picked up neat as a pin.
That's my girl, Sally. Why don't you go down to the soda fountain and get yourself an ice cream sundae? Inspector Locke's treat.
Locke gets some change from his pocket and hands it to her.
Sure. It's the least I can do. Thank you again, Sally.
Of course. No trouble at all. I guess I'll be going then.
Sally exits.
Something on your mind, Duncan?
You might say that. Have a seat, Inspector. This may take a minute.
Locke sighs and sits across from Cam.
So tell me again how you first met Rose McKenzie.
It's like I told you yesterday, at the crime scene, the day of her husband's murder.
What if I were to tell you that I got a witness that says otherwise?
What are you getting at?
Let's just say that I got a tip that you and the doc's wife were seen together, a full 2 weeks before the murder.
Look, Duncan, I don't know where you get your information, but...
Vinny's Diner? Ring a bell?
Locke stands and crosses away from the desk and begins pacing, clearly anxious now.
Look, Duncan, you have to believe me. This has got nothing to do with this.
Really? I'm not so sure a jury would agree.
Exactly. That's why no one can know. Do you know what could happen? My entire investigation, every piece of evidence I've logged, all of it, thrown out as inadmissible. How can I protect her if that happens?
Why do you want to?
You wouldn't understand.
Look, I get it. She's a knockout, and now with her husband gone, she's got money too. But are you really willing to throw away your whole career over a dame you just met?
Yes. If it comes to that, if it keeps her out of prison, or worse.
So you'd do anything to protect her?
Yes.
Even murder?
What? That's just crazy. You know me better than that.
Do I? Because here's what I think what happened. A beautiful and lonely woman moves into the city. Maybe she's escaping a bad situation, trying to get the past behind her. Maybe she's just looking for a fresh start. Either way, she's here, and she's smart. She doesn't want to be alone, so she starts looking around. She ends up in the office of a well-off and tragically widowed doctor. Not entirely by chance, I'm thinking. The wedding is on all the social pages, but a few years later, things are on the rocks, and she's looking for a way out. Divorce is out of the question, so she arranges another chance meeting, this time with a police detective who can be flattered by the attention of a lovely damsel in distress. He falls, hard, and now he's ready to do anything for her. So one night, he waits outside the office building until he sees the nurse leaving for the day. He goes upstairs to the doc's office and, well, I think you know the rest.
That's a hell of a story, Duncan. Maybe you should be writing those cheap detective novels because that is some great fiction.
Really? Sounds like a perfect setup to me. As a homicide detective, you would know how to manipulate the evidence so it doesn't lead back to you or her. But there were some flaws in the plan, and now the person you wanted to save is the prime suspect.
I came to you as a friend, and now you're accusing me of murder? You couldn't be more wrong. I told you before, it's not like that with Rose.
Then tell me how it is. If you really want my help, you gotta come clean with me. Talk to me, Albert.
What do you want to know?
Let's start with the evidence. Tell me about the gun. The report doesn't say anything about it except that it was found at the scene. How did it get there?
Remember, I said I had evidence that could convict Rose. That was it. The gun belonged to Dr. McKenzie. He kept it locked up at home in a desk drawer. Only 2 people know it was there. The doc?
And Rose.
Yes. So, God help me, I altered the report. I had to. Don't you see? Rose says she didn't do this, and I have to believe her.
At the risk of your badge, your career, not to mention the evidence, what is it about this woman that's got you ready to...
No, you got it all wrong. Rose McKenzie and I are not...
Locke, tell me.
She's my sister. There. Are you happy now? She's my sister.
Cam stares at Locke in stunned silence as this new revelation sinks in.
Sister? What sister? Albert, I've known you for a lot of years, but you never talked about a sister. You grew up in the boys' home downtown, right? No parents and no sister.
That's what I told everybody. My parents died when I was 7 years old. My sister Molly, that was her name then, was only 2 years old. I was sent to the boys' home, and Molly, well, I never knew what happened to her until about a month ago. That's when she showed up at the precinct and told me who she was. I was shocked, of course. I didn't believe her at first, but she knew things about our family, about me. And she had a birth certificate. She told me how she'd been adopted when she was 4, and her new parents, the Baileys, changed her name to Rose.
Why didn't you say anything, especially after the murder? Why all the secrecy?
She wanted to keep it quiet until she could work things out with her husband. That's why we never met in public, except for the one time at Vinny's. It made sense at the time, but then Dr. McKenzie was killed, and I knew I couldn't say anything, not if I wanted to help her.
There is a knock at the door, stopping the conversation cold. Sally enters tentatively.
All right if I come in?
The men look at each other and wave her in.
Back so soon? How was the ice cream?
It was wonderful. Chocolate ice cream with butterscotch and lots of peanuts. Thank you again, Albert.
Anytime, Sally. Anytime.
There's someone outside to see you, Cam. It's Rose McKenzie. You know, that doctor's wife?
Send her in, Sally. It's fine.
Sally exits and immediately returns with Rose. Locke and Rose stand at the center of the room next to each other as Sally and Cam look on.
Inspector Locke, how nice to see you again.
It's all right, Rose. Duncan knows everything.
Everything?
I'll explain later.
Rose is caught off guard for a moment, but quickly recovers.
Yes, I suppose that's only right. You're doing so much to help us. You deserve our honesty.
Well, I'd better be going and get these files back to the office. Duncan, meet me later at Vinny's. We'll have some pie, and I'll give you anything else I've dug up. Rose, I'll stop by tomorrow to check on you.
Thank you, Albert. I look forward to it.
Rose and Locke exchange a warm smile, and he exits.
Mrs. McKenzie, what can I do for you?
Actually, I wanted to do something for you. You've been so kind to help us, and I wanted to show my appreciation.
Rose takes an envelope out of her purse and hands it to Cam. He opens it to find that it is full of cash.
Mrs. McKenzie, I can't accept this. I'm doing this as a favor to Inspector Locke.
Please, I insist.
Sally springs into action and takes the envelope from Cam.
What Mr. Duncan means to say is, thank you, Mrs. McKenzie.
Why, Mr. Duncan, it seems you have a protector of your own. You're a lucky man.
Yes, he is.
Well, I'd better be going. I have an appointment at the church to make arrangements for my husband's funeral. My calling card is in the envelope should you need to reach me. Thank you, and good day to you both.
Rose exits.
So you were going to explain about Inspector Locke and Mrs. McKenzie?
Yeah, better pull up a chair.
Sally sits in a chair near the desk.
I spent the next hour or so giving Sally the rundown on what I had learned about Inspector Locke's relationship to Rose McKenzie. I figured the information would be safe with her. If a guy can't trust his secretary, who can he trust? I used to feel the same way about Locke, but now, let's just say I was beginning to wonder what else he might be keeping from me. Then there was the matter of the cash that Mrs. McKenzie had dropped into our laps. More money than I'd seen in a long time, and Lord knows, we needed it. But was it really a payment for my services, or a payoff to keep quiet about any incriminating evidence I might come across? I couldn't be sure. Either way, I figured it couldn't hurt to pay Sally what I owed her and give her the rest for safekeeping. I had a few hours to kill before meeting Locke at the diner, so I gave Sally the rest of the day off and headed home to freshen up. I got to thinking about Locke and his newfound sister. He was clearly devoted to her and determined to protect her. It certainly explained a lot about his recent behavior, but what question kept nagging at me? Would all of that be enough to drive him to murder?
Cam arrives at the diner. He looks around and sees that Locke has not yet arrived, so he takes a seat. Lucy is waiting on another table of diners. She finishes with them and comes to Cam's table.
Back again so soon? You'd better have some money in your pocket this time. Vinny is on the warpath about your tab.
Oh, don't worry, Lucy. I'm meeting Inspector Locke here in a few minutes. This is on his dime.
That cop fella? All right then, you can stay. Coffee while you wait?
Yes, please. You know me too well.
Lucy starts to exit, but is stopped by the sound of the door crashing open. Locke stumbles in. He leans against the door for a moment before slumping to the floor. There is a large blood stain spreading across his chest. He has been shot. Cam rushes to his side.
Albert, what happened? Who did this?
The man outside.
Lucy, call the police and tell them to send the meat wagon.
Lucy rushes out to make the call. Cam takes a quick look outside but doesn't see anyone. He kneels down next to Locke.
Hold on, pal. Help is on the way. What man? Do you know him?
The one outside.
There's no one outside. I just looked.
No. Outside the doc's office building.
The mystery man. The one with the carpet bag.
Investigation. Getting too close.
He reaches up and grabs Cam's arm.
Rose. You have to. She's in danger.
Lucy returns, carrying some towels.
They're on their way. I thought these might help stop the bleeding.
Thanks, Luce.
Cam holds the towels to Locke's wound. Police and ambulance sirens are heard in the distance. Locke is getting weaker. He tries to speak.
Albert, save your strength. Don't try to talk anymore.
He utters his last word.
Rose.
Locke is gone. Cam stares in disbelief for a moment and then rises.
Stay with him, Luce. I need to use your phone.
Sure, Cam. There's one behind the counter.
Cam rushes to the telephone and dials a number. On the other end of the line, Cam's secretary, Sally.
Hello?
Sally, it's me. I need your help. Do you still have Rose McKenzie's calling card?
Sure. It's still in the envelope with the money. Cam, what's wrong?
I'm sorry. No time to explain right now. I need Rose McKenzie's home address.
Hold the line. I'll get it.
There's a moment while Sally gets the card.
Okay, here it is. 722 East Magnolia Drive. Do you want me to meet you there?
No, Sally, absolutely not. I'll tell you everything as soon as I can. For now, just sit tight.
Cam hangs up the phone. The police and ambulance have arrived. Someone has covered Locke's body with a sheet. Cam knows he needs to leave, but he also knows the police will want to question him, and he doesn't have that kind of time if he's to get to Rose McKenzie. So he turns to the only person in the diner who can help him.
Lucy, I've got to get out of here. Can I use your back door?
Sure, but what's going on?
No time. I've got to go.
He starts to exit and then comes back with one more favor to ask.
I've got to get uptown. In a hurry. Do you think you could...
Lucy digs into her pocket and pulls out a handful of cash.
Here, my tips for the day. Take it.
Thanks, Luce. I owe you. Big time.
Get out of here. I'll keep the cops busy.
Cam exits the diner.
Rose McKenzie's address was uptown. Way uptown. And I needed to get there fast. It was a risky move leaving the crime scene, but if Rose was in trouble, taking the time to explain that to the cops would have taken too long. I made a quick stop in the office to pick up my 45, then set out to find the nearest cab. I couldn't shake the image of Locke lying there on the diner floor, but I needed to find a way to put it out of my mind. I had no idea what was waiting for me at Rose McKenzie's place. It didn't take long to find out. Rose McKenzie's address was uptown, way uptown, and I needed to get there fast. It was a risky move leaving the crime scene, but if Rose was in trouble, taking the time to explain that to the cops would have taken too long. I made a quick stop in the office to pick up my 45, then set out to find the nearest cab. I couldn't shake the image of Locke lying there on the diner floor, but I knew I needed to find a way to put it out of my mind. I had no idea what was waiting for me at Rose McKenzie's place. It didn't take long to find out. I got to the house and let the cab go. No idea how I was getting back to the city, but I really wasn't thinking about that yet. The house looked about what you'd expect for a high-class doctor. Great neighborhood, nice lawn. Just one thing wrong. The house was dark, and the front door was open. I stepped inside. Nice entryway. So this is how the other half lives. It was dark inside, but I could see a light at the end of the hallway. Only one thing to do. Head that way and check it out. But just to be on the safe side, I decided to let my revolver lead the way.
Cam pulls his gun and quietly makes his way down the hall. He stops briefly at the door and then cautiously enters. It's a parlor room with overstuffed chairs, side tables, and a fireplace. Cam sees a figure dressed in an overcoat and hat, packing some things into a large carpet bag. He levels his gun at the figure.
Put your hands up where I can see them.
The figure freezes momentarily, then slowly raises hands.
Turn around, slowly. And while you're at it, tell me where Mrs. McKenzie is.
The figure turns to face Cam, head lowered, and a hat covering his face.
Maybe you didn't hear me. Where is Mrs. McKenzie?
The figure slowly raises his head, and we see a face.
Right in front of you.
Rose?
Mr. Duncan, I know how this looks, but I assure you...
Stop. Don't bother. The overcoat, the hat, the carpet bag, the mysterious man outside the building the day of the murder, and this afternoon at the diner. It was you all along.
You don't understand.
Sure I do. I understand about Doc McKenzie. Unhappy wife whose husband won't give her a divorce or the money she thinks she deserves. With the husband dead, she gets both her freedom and the money. So you dress up in men's clothes and wait outside the building until you see the nurse leave. Then you go inside and change back into Rose McKenzie. You stash the coat and the hat in the bag and hide it somewhere, wait until you come back for it. Then you're about to walk straight into the doc's office and no one takes a second look. But the thing I don't get, why kill Locke, the one person fighting to protect you? Your own brother. Unless that was a lie too.
Rose's face changes as she realizes Cam has figured it out.
Why, Mr. Duncan, it seems you're smarter than you look.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
I'd like to explain it to you, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable doing so without a gun pointed at me. Please, I am unarmed, and I'm tired of running.
Cam thinks for a moment and slowly lowers his gun. Rose sinks into a chair while Cam, still on his guard, remains standing.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. I've been on my own for most of my life. My parents deserted me when I was very young, just 5 years old. They just left me on the doorstep of a church and told me to wait for them. They never came back, and I never saw them again. The priest took me to a children's home, and that's where I grew up. It was difficult. Most of us spent long days working in a factory. Food was scarce, but I learned how to get what I needed to survive.
That's a sad story. Still waiting for the part that justifies murder.
Rose rises and Cam puts up the gun.
Not so fast.
Would you like a drink, Mr. Duncan? I know I could use one.
No, thank you.
May I then?
Cam nods and lowers the gun. Rose moves to a table set with bottles, a decanter, and glasses. She makes a drink and moves back to face Cam.
The one bright spot in all this was my friend. My best friend and the only person I could trust. Her name was Molly.
Locke's real sister.
Yes. She barely remembered Albert, but she talked about him all the time. She was convinced he would be coming to get her someday. She had some photographs in a box she kept under her bed. Molly told me everything she knew about Albert and her family so many times. I knew the story by heart. Then, when we were 16, there was a fire at the children's home. It was chaos, and I grabbed everything I could carry before running out, including Molly's box. But I couldn't find Molly. I found out later she died in the fire. Do you know what it's like to lose a friend like that?
Yes, I'm afraid I do. So when did you decide to become Molly? And why? Was it just to get Albert Locke on your side?
Like I said, Mr. Duncan, I do what I need to survive.
With a sudden movement, Rose throws the contents of her glass in Cam's face. He staggers back a few steps and drops his gun. He wipes his eyes and sees that Rose now has a gun pointed at him. We now see her for what she really is.
Stay where you are, Mr. Duncan. Or may I still call you Cam?
Rose, or whoever you are, you don't have to do this.
Oh, I think I do. I can see that you're not nearly as gullible as my late husband and Inspector Locke. All Frank needed was a little flattery. And Locke, he was so desperate to believe his long-lost sister had found him. It was easy enough to get a copy of Molly's birth certificate, and I knew enough about his family history to convince him of the rest.
So why kill him?
He made the mistake of looking into the children's home and the fire. It was only a matter of time before he learned the truth about Molly's death.
Rose is moving toward the door now. Her eyes and the gun remain fixed on Cam.
You know, I really do need to thank you. As you can see, I was packing to leave town, but now I'll be able to stay here in this house with Frank's money and resume my role as the grieving widow. Just one loose end to tie up. You and your little secretary are the only ones who know about Locke's so-called sister. I'll take care of her shortly, but since you are already here...
No. Leave Sally out of this.
That's sweet, but I'm afraid I can't do that.
Sally quietly enters the room behind Rose. Cam sees her, but doesn't let on.
As for you, I'll be calling the police shortly to let them know that I found an intruder in my house and shot him in self-defense. A few tears should convince them that I had no way to know it was you. And don't worry about Sally. I'll make it look like an accident. Goodbye, Mr. Duncan.
Sally looks around and finds a bottle on a nearby table. She raises it up and smashes it over Rose's head. Rose slumps to the floor, unconscious. Cam rushes in and retrieves his gun and kicks Rose's weapon away from her hand.
Sally, are you all right?
Yes. What about her?
She's out cold. Good job, Slugger. What are you doing here? I told you to stay away.
Lucky for you, I'm not very good at following directions.
Yeah, lucky for me.
Rose starts to stir.
Call it in, Sally. I'll keep an eye on this one.
Sally starts to exit to look for a phone.
Sally, about Inspector Locke. I need to tell you.
I know. I stopped by the diner before coming here.
Sally touches Cam's arm gently and exits to find the phone. Rose regains consciousness only to find herself face to face with Cam's revolver.
It's all over, Rose. If that's even your real name.
I don't suppose it matters now. You don't really think you can make this stick, do you?
That's for the court to decide. What I do know is you killed your husband in cold blood, and then Albert Locke. The only good thing in all this is that he died believing he found his sister.
Then he was a fool.
Maybe so, but he was also a good man, and a good cop who would have done anything to protect you. But now he's gone. And that's something you might regret once the boys from the precinct get here, because if there's one thing they don't take kindly to, It's someone who murders one of their own.
Lights come up on Cam's office. Sally is on the phone.
Sure, I'll see that he gets the message. Thank you. Goodbye.
Sally hangs up. Cam enters as the phone begins ringing again. Sally picks it up.
Cam Duncan, private investigator. Yes, we are taking new cases. Would you like to make an appointment? All right. We can see you 1 week from Thursday at 2 o'clock. May I have your name? All right. I have you in the book. Yes, I'll let you know if there's a cancellation. Thank you. Goodbye.
Sally hangs up the phone and then takes it off the hook.
It's been like that all morning. I'm almost sorry you had the phone reconnected. I guess that's what happens when you're front page news.
Not exactly the way I wanted to get noticed, but at least everybody knows the truth about Rose now. And Locke.
Cam, if you want to take the day off, I can cancel your afternoon appointments. The funeral was just yesterday, and no one would blame you if...
No need for that. I need to keep busy.
It was a really nice service, though, wasn't it?
Full police department honors. It's what he deserved. And if Locke were here right now, he'd be saying, Duncan, stop moping around and get back to work. We got a case to solve. Let's not disappoint him.
Sally starts to put the phone back on the hook, but Cam stops her.
Wait a minute, Sal. I was thinking maybe after we close up, you and me get some dinner. I know it's a little Italian place. Of course, if you don't want to, I understand. I just thought maybe...
Yes, I'd love to.
Yeah? Well, that's great. And I'm buying, so you get whatever you want, okay? Bet you never thought you'd hear me say that. Okay, so what have we got going on for today?
Well, at 11 o'clock, you have Mr. and Mrs. Abernathy. They've been hearing strange noises in their backyard during the night, and they think their neighbor is up to something. Then at 1, you have Mrs. Newton. She thinks someone is coming into her house whenever she's out rearranging all her furniture. Then at 3, you have...
Thank you again to David, Meagan, Lynn, John, and Toni for being part of our virtual staged reading of Cam Duncan and the Dilemma of the Doctor's Wife. Honestly, I'm going to miss saying that. So, actors, any final thoughts on virtual performing?
And in the end, it's like, well, there's really not that much to think about. It was just a fun story, and I mean, not fun, all of it. There is murder, but it was a mystery, and there were some, there were fun elements in the story itself, and it was a fun project. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Cam gets into next.
But the potential is really there, and it was interesting to see, what you and John came up with as far as the split screen and the sound effects and the little chaser pictures across,
And then we had the days when Meagan and David weren't there, and I was just reading opposite you. So I'm going with, my intention and my responses, just hoping they match up with what David had already recorded, which they seem to do in the final product.
This format, if you kind of change how it's presented, the work, how it's presented, and still have rehearsal time, it can totally work. It's just we have to adjust a lot of things. So that gives me hope as an actor that I'll still be able to rehearse, emote, create. We just have to do it differently.
As for us, we will definitely be looking for more things like that to feature on Ghostlighting. And who knows, there might even be another adventure out there for Cam Duncan himself. The Randall Theater Company is closing in on a space to do shows in real life, so stay tuned for more information as things develop. And if you would like to help us get there with a donation, just go to the link at the bottom of your screen or click the donate button at randalltheater.com. And if you donate $20 or more, I'll send you one of our two-tone Theater Strong wristbands. And remember, you can catch up on our Ghostlighting episodes anytime on the Randall Theater Company Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time, but until then, we'll keep the ghost light on for you.